So we have 3 speakers with us tonight. This is Alexis Andra. Did I say that right?
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Dawn Carter, some of you might know her. And then we also have Liv Shin, who's on WebEx all the way from Austin, Texas. So we'll just get started. You guys can each kind of give a summary about what you do, your experience in the marketing industry.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
You're more exciting. Go ahead, you go first.
Nah. Hi, I'm Alexis Andra, and so I'm not in the marketing industry per se, but I own a creative agency here in Riverside called The Shift Creative, and we do large-scale builds for different brands, conferences. We build all the sets, all the things that you see on Instagram. We're kind of behind that, but with that, a lot of marketing goes into that, right? So we have to be active on all social media platforms, and we have to think through how we are presenting our information to our ideal client. So definitely goes hand in hand.
Awesome. And I'm Dawn Carter, and I am the industry liaison here, but I was just telling someone that academia is kind of a new role for me because I came from industry. Right out of school, I started working at an import automotive company, totally by random accident, not that I sought it out. I was a psychology major looking for work. And I was working as a temp and then ended up getting hired on because they knew me, they knew the quality of my work. The first entry-level marketing job that opened up, I was like the obvious candidate because they knew I'd already expressed interest in wanting to work in marketing. So my first job was as an advertising programs administrator. And what that job kind of entailed, doing all the, like you said, behind the scenes, the stuff that made things happen when an import automotive company would do like promotions with a magazine, like who has to coordinate getting the vehicles from here to there, or being the liaison with the ad agency. So after I was there for about 4 or 5 years, I found out that I was kind of good with data, and I really liked consumer analysis. So I was recruited to a ad agency where I worked for 2 years as a strategic associate director of strategic planning. So that's kind of like getting smarter about who your consumers are, and then translating that to the creative team or the account team, or even giving the client insights into who their customer is. From there, I went to LA Times. I was the database marketing manager there, and then I did the rest of my work at a couple internet startups working in marketing. Moved away from the consumer side more to the business to business side. So yeah, I kind of stepped back and worked part-time once I started having my kids, because I didn't need to work full-time, but I very much loved the industry. I really liked marketing, and especially marketing tech, things that were, because it was always changing, you know. It'll date me, but the internet was just coming out. And I was giving like, what is the internet classes to clients, and you're gonna need a website one day, really, trust me, you know, so those kinds of things. So that was kind of fun to be on the edge of that, and that's part of what drew me to marketing, is that it's always changing. And then I like understanding people too, so that's kind of cool. So that's kind of my career in a nutshell. My last 10 years, I kind of worked part-time as a marketing director for companies that didn't want a full-time marketing director. So I did a lot of work with nonprofits and then smaller companies that just, you know, like really need a marketing director, but we can only pay for like 20 hours a week. I'm like, cool, I'll do that. So I did that before I came to CBU.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Perfect. Awesome. Well, it's so great to see you guys all. I guess this is as in person as we can get. I'm currently in Oregon right now, but I actually got to visit CBU a little bit less than a month ago, and you guys are phenomenal. I love y'all's school. I've never heard of CBU before, and we're actually opening up our first West Coast office in Los Angeles, and so got to explore schools including CBU, and you guys are doing a great thing, so just wanted to hype you guys up at first. But thank you guys so much for having me today. Really excited to share a little bit about myself, as well as kind of how marketing has played a role into where I am today. And so my name is Liv Shin. I am a financial planner at a values-based financial planning firm called 49 Financial. But kind of my career path up to that point, very twisty-turny, because I never thought that I would be in the job that I am today. And one of the things I want to talk about is the importance in finding a job that really resonates with who you are and what you believe in. And so just a little background on myself. I grew up on the East Coast. I grew up in New Jersey, but moved out to Oregon when I was 10 years old because my dad got a job out at Kaiser, if any of y'all are familiar with that. And he opened up the first kind of Northwest Heart program over there. And so growing up, I got to see my dad as well as my mom, who both positions just have so much passion in what they got to do every day. I got secondhand experience the exhaustion, the really tiring days, but always just kind of their positive attitude because they loved what they were doing and they knew the positive impact they were creating in this world. And so for myself, when I thought about kind of what job do I want, I knew I wanted that impact that my parents had, but I just also knew I couldn't stomach medicine. And so when I kind of looked in and saw the gifts that I was blessed with and just the talents and the things that I wanted to pursue, I thought becoming a school teacher. I love children and I love to learn, so I couldn't think of a better way to go into a full-time role post-graduation than molding the minds of the young. I mean, how impactful is that? And so that took me out to Texas Christian University in Fort Worth. Go Frogs, if any of y'all know our mascot. But my plan was to basically earn my master's within 5 years and then go back to Oregon and start teaching. But my time at TCU, I'm sure a lot of you guys are seeing this now, being juniors or seniors about to graduate, is that college is an experience. It's a time not just to hone into, okay, what do I want to do post-graduation, but it's also such a great time to just learn more about who you are and who you want to become. And so I started a children's book company. It's called Shindig Publishing, a little pun on my last name, when I was in middle school, because I always liked using my creative skills to move people to action for their betterment. And for me, I thought, hey, I think that there's a lack of education in kids knowing about just how people perceive the world differently. So how can I utilize my creative skills to educate kids? And so while I was at TCU, I found myself working 3-4 different jobs outside of school, where one, I was trying to pay off tuition because TCU is very expensive. But two, because I was very passionate about helping move companies to action, help serve people in a positive way. And so whether it was being an RA in my first year hall, where I got to figure out ways to cultivate community among freshman students and get them to come to events where they got to know people, or becoming a cycle instructor and figuring out how to make investing in your health fun and making really hard cycling classes something that people enjoyed. I love getting to use that creative piece, and my entrepreneurial spirit was like, hey, what do I want to do post-graduation? And so I ended up switching my degree plan to strategic communication, and there were really 2 routes I could take. It was advertising or it was going to be PR. And for me, I really like doing the creative piece of learning more about brands and figuring out creative and fun ways to bring that to the world. And so when I switched my degree plan, I ended up becoming an editorial intern for a digital agency. And man, it was such a fun time because the culture and the people, I mean, it was just a company that I wanted to get to be a part of. And I'm really grateful for the experience because what I learned was, man, I love promoting ideas and missions and values that I'm so passionate about. But when it comes to coming to your thoughts on how to build brands and ideas that I didn't believe in, that was where I found resistance. And it was my senior year when I was thinking, okay, this is the job I was going to go into, where I watched the documentary. Have y'all watched The Social Dilemma before?
Yes.
You can nod or say yes or no. Yeah, but man, that was such a just convicting documentary for me because it really just spoke to maybe not the prettiest way in terms of how advertising worked. And I mean, I love advertising. I feel like there are so many things you're doing in life where to sell is to love people. I mean, to advertise things that you're passionate about is amazing. And so not to say that advertising is bad or anything by any means, but for me, at least for myself, I needed to find a job that was in direct alignment with my values and with what I believed in. And so come my senior year, that is when my business partner and my leader really reached out to me and asked for the opportunity to share more about what he gets to do with serving clients and making an impact. And I mean, I saw it on LinkedIn, it said financial planning firm, and I said, I'm very, very confused. And I even told him, we kind of laugh about it now. I mean, I reached out and I was like, hey, I'm not really sure why you're reaching out to me. I'm not a finance major, not passionate about necessarily talking about finance, but I do want to help people. And he was like, Liv, I mean, at least let me share what I get to do, because a lot of the values that I see in your website and in your LinkedIn profile are things that I think you might resonate with, because that is what our company is founded on. And so that was last July of 2021. And when I said yes to this opportunity, I was just so open-minded. And looking back on it, I think that when I go back to why I chose 49 Financial, I mean, besides the big things of like they were going to support me and show me how to learn the skills I needed for the job, it was really the values that was the turning point for, hey, I can see myself getting behind this company, because at the heart of what we do is serving people, and it's very in alignment with my faith and what I believe in. And so I guess takeaways from this, I mean, one is create a digital presence. Whether you guys have websites or ways to really market yourself, make it known in a kind of the career that you want, whether values is important to you or not, or what you are looking for in a career. Because Dean found me, my business partner, through kind of the digital presence I created when marketing myself out. The second piece I will end with is just, really think about the values that you want in a career post-graduation and stay open-minded, because to be a part of a culture and a people that are on the same page as you on values, it is just such a refreshing type of work experience and life that you get to be a part of when you graduate. And so thank you guys so much for just giving me the opportunity to share a little bit about my story up to this point. And I kind of cut out in the beginning, so I don't know how it works with questions, if that's till later or not, but I talked to Izzy, and she'll make sure to have my contact information if you want to really just have a conversation on a one-to-one basis, whether it's getting to support you guys in this season of life where it is like, I don't know what I want to do post-graduation, or anything on marketing at all. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Olivia. Okay, perfect. Okay, so one question that I wanted to ask kind of all of you is, what are some of the most major changes you've seen in the industry within the past few years? Because I know a lot's been changing, especially with COVID. And how do you kind of deal with that change? Have there been any times where it's been difficult?
I think for me, I've seen a lot of changes in just people putting out their work online. Digital courses are huge right now, conferences, any type of class or any type of skill set that you have and offering it as a digital course has blown up. Mm-hmm. I always say that now, the front door is actually your website. Instead of the physical door of walking into a business, it is now, and it kind of always has been in a way, but I think now your online presence is so much more impactful because of COVID. So when people are looking at your site or they're looking at your offerings, they are getting a taste of your whole entire business without ever even meeting you. And so I've seen a lot of people put a lot more emphasis on that. And I think even for myself, with the Shift Creative, when COVID hit, I had mentioned before, we build brand activations for different brands, and most of it was all in-person events. And so all of a sudden, we are almost fully booked for the year of 2020. And then March, the second week of March, just like all of you guys, everything crashed, and it was like everyone canceled on us, or everyone was trying to reschedule. And we were like, okay, well, we are an in-person, like we're an event company, like what are we gonna do? How are we gonna stay afloat? And so, speaking from experience, we had to look and say, what do we have in our toolbox currently? What are we really good at, and what can we offer that's of value to many different demographics? Maybe not even the brands we're used to working with, but maybe other types of people that are now becoming our ideal clients. For example, entrepreneurs that are just starting, or people that are interested in starting a business. Now, how can I, as an entrepreneur, kind of bundle up a course, from my knowledge, and offer it to them during COVID, right? Or during the time where we're not in person anymore. So I really had to think through, what do we have as a company? What are we really good at, and how can we package that and, really reach a different demographic than maybe we wouldn't have, pre-COVID. So I definitely think that a lot of businesses were even born out of COVID, because everyone was trying to think creatively and outside of the box. And they were like, okay, well, I think this is now the time. COVID kind of gave people the push to really take that next step in starting their business. And it was online. It was the digital courses. It was the workshops. It was the small shop. And we even started doing like t-shirts and like with empowering phrases, and that's not even what we do, but it was like you have to start thinking of new ways to present yourself, given the circumstances. And it really did open up a lot of doors for us, after, as things start opening up. So I would say that those would be, the main things that I've noticed is that big push.
Yeah, I can piggyback on that. I mean, I'm no longer in the advertising industry, but I think I can speak on behalf of all the industries out there. I mean, everything has very much become digitized. And I mean, there's pros and cons to it, there's access. I mean, for myself in this industry, now I get to serve clients from all over the country because everyone's familiar with Zoom. And so being able to get to serve anyone and everyone has been really, really awesome. But on the other side, I think that there is almost a barrier that comes with getting to level 5 communication with people over Zoom or over WebEx. And so really trying to be intentional and creative about how we can get to level 5 communication, how to build relationships really organically over web has been kind of just a challenge I have experienced. And so, I mean, part of the reason why I'm in Oregon right now is because it's worth the travel trip to go back home and see clients over here, because getting to meet up with people in person over coffee can be a game changer. And so I guess I'd end with, man, it's been so awesome to see kind of industries digitize and open up opportunity, but there is nothing like meeting people face to face.
Yeah, I think I love that emphasis, that face-to-face part of things is really emphasizing the relationships. And it really comes down to relationships, whether those are maintained digitally and they're started IRL, and then you just kind of keep that thin connection with people digitally, or maybe it starts digitally, but then you get to meet up with someone at a conference that you've been like friends with for a couple of years in an online community. So I think that really what you're looking at is just that even though the landscape changes and how we connect changes, some of the fundamentals stay the same. And one is being a person of honor. Just quick example, there was someone that I had met, I was all part of the Periscope craze a couple years ago when everyone was live streaming and whatnot, and then it got bought by Twitter. But part of that Periscope community, we started to kind of meet with each other, a lot of the entrepreneurs that were starting their online courses, learning from each other, those types of things. But there was someone who had kind of rallied a little bit of a business opportunity, and it kind of went south. And so he kind of was like, oh, like I don't want to be doing work with this person because their reputation is not so great. So now, I mean, you think everything's digital, but that's a good and a bad. I mean, so that means that if you mess up, which we all mess up. I mean, that's, but it's recorded now, and now you've got, your reputation is really all you have. And your proof of work. I love that idea of creating your digital presence before you get on there. And before while I was consulting, I went out and did a lot of live streams every day, just leading with value. I guess I see that's another thing that I've seen over the last 5 years, where a lot of entrepreneurs, they start with giving. They start with serving in some way. So let's see, whether it's, teaching people how to promote their business. I know you've done that a lot online, which is, you're basically like, pull this flock, to you of training the next generation of business people. So kind of leading with content that trains or brings value to people. And that's a really great way to establish trust. I mean, not in a manipulative way, but in a genuine way. So I think that's one of the big things. The other change that I've seen is just this tremendous, because everyone's a producer, the influx of just junk that's out there is just, so it really becomes, how do you sort through, how do you differentiate? And then I think the third one is just the rise of video. I mean, if your videos are not optimized, TikTok is one piece when you're talking about the marketing to consumers, but are there business to business customers that are using those types of things? Just being open to where those are, but really video. Just the gritty part of when something happens can be recorded at a level so it's still spontaneous and real and genuine, but we can use it later. We can use clips later and say, like, even little things like, making sure we have good audio quality, something like that. When it's not just yourself and a camera, when it's something in a more organized fashion. So yeah, I would say the rise of video, the proliferation of just junk that's out there, and then fighting through that clutter. Yeah.
So another thing I wanted to ask you guys is, have you dealt with any specific situations that come to mind that maybe you feel like you failed on a project or didn't do as well as you didn't do, or maybe the client wasn't happy? And how do you handle those types of situations?
I can start on that one because I have a lot of failure. So I've been in the workforce longer, so I've got decades of examples. Yeah, I think one of that's a great question, by the way. For if you didn't hear it, it's just, was there a situation where you had a failure or a disappointment, and how did you handle that with clients or in probably a high pressure situation? I would say, how do I pick one? I would just say one, telling a client that I could deliver something and then maybe having an issue. The best way to deal with it is be honest right up front. Don't surprise them, and whatever you do, don't pretend like it didn't happen, and don't try to BS your way. Because again, remember, we go back to that trust aspect. You need to develop your reputation as a trustworthy person, and own it. That's the thing. Just own the mistake and say, you know what, I blew it. Here's what happened. And here's what I'm gonna do to fix it. Yeah. So that really is just and then also too, I think more on a personal side, and as a believer, as a Christ follower, my worth and my love, my value as a person is settled. That's already settled. God loves me, and He's gifted me, and I'm gonna make mistakes because I'm human, and that's okay. And so I know sometimes there was a point in my career that I was terrified of failure, terrified. If then that's going to destroy things. But really, I have control, but really my value is not, I might lose some followers or lose some, popularity, but my worth is settled. So I guess then mistakes didn't scare me as much.
That's cool. I definitely have a lot of stories as well. I was just trying to think. There's this one in particular, it's kind of embarrassing, but here we are into my group here. So this is recent too. So we were doing a large scale experiential, activation for a client that is a repeat client. We kind of have a really good relationship with them. It's for an outdoor mall. And when we do our mock-ups, when we do our renderings, many times we put a quote as a placeholder in the rendering. It's not, typically people aren't just yes, use that quote. But there was this quote, but my graphic designer, is not her fault. I should have caught it. I didn't catch it. But she put the quote in there, but it was the artwork of someone else. She put the quote in there. I didn't catch it. I just thought this is cute. I don't know. And so the company wrote off on it and was like, love it, love the quote. We're like, cool, great. We built the whole thing. It's up in LA. People are taking photos of it. And all of a sudden, my client contacts me and is like, hey, this artist is reaching out saying that her artwork has been copied. And my mouth was dropped open. I was like, I could have died right there. I was like, I cannot believe this is happening. And really, it was just an oversight. I obviously weren't intentionally. I'm so big on not copying other people's work that I was mortified. And so, she forwards me the email, and she's obviously pissed, right? She's like not like happy. And she's like, yeah, that's my artwork, and you got compensated and I didn't get compensated. And now it's on Instagram, and it's, whatever, whoever's seen it, and shared it, it's on Pinterest, whatever. And I had to, talk with the artist and apologize, try to make it right any way that I could. And there was a bit of a back and forth. There was a bit of a struggle because she wanted to be financially compensated for the artwork, even though I was like, I'm gonna go right now. It had been like 2 days. I was like, we'll paint over it. We'll do something new. Doesn't matter. The artwork was already on there. People had already seen it. I had already posted about it. So what's happening is I got compensated. She did not. Doesn't matter if it was 2 days or 2 hours. So I had to make it right, and I had to pay for her artwork. I had to pay for her graphics. And so that's the right thing to do, right? But at the end of the day, I had to also make a decision. Like, I could either say, okay, well, this was an oversight. I'm just gonna go paint over it and whatever. Like, you could do what you want, or I could preserve, and then that could damage the relationship with that client, with the mall, right? Because then it could cause bigger issues with my client. So I said, also, as a Christian, I need to go above and beyond. I need to make things right, no matter if it's gonna cost me money, right? Because the relationship's more important, and ultimately the relationship, even with this artist, is important. And so I think looking at it as just that, it has nothing to do with even the art. It has nothing to do with the build. It has everything to do with considering your wake, right? And I've heard this term so long ago when I read this book called Integrity. It's super, super good if you want to read it. It's all about business, but it's called Integrity, and it talks a lot about considering your wake. And what that means is when you are interacting with other people, if it's a client, if it's you're just networking, or anyway, you are thinking like, how am I impacting them? What am I offering them? What value am I giving? But also, how am I leaving them as I leave the conversation or leave the email? How am I leaving them? How am I making them feel? How am I making them think? How am I challenging them? How am I encouraging them? And so I kind of had to think about that in that moment. Consider my wake. How am I leaving this artist who's coming to me saying that her artwork is on this big install? Am I gonna be like, screw you, honestly, or am I gonna make it right? So ultimately I made it right, and I preserved the relationship with this client who was one of our bigger clients, and we still do work with them. And now obviously I was scared at first, like, oh crap, this girl's gonna air me on Instagram, like I copied her work and I'm gonna get canceled. Like I'm gonna get canceled. I was like, this is it, this is my time. But I was like, okay, Lord. And the Lord knew, and I made it right, and it was there's more blessing because I made it right. There was more blessing even in that relationship with the artist. There was more blessing with my relationship with the mall because now, we're still working with them, and I can say I walked away with integrity, right? So it's it's a hard line sometimes where I'm like, well, it wasn't intentional, or well, we did change it. Like, I can make all the excuses, but at the end of the day, what's right is right? And so that was a recent one, but I have a lot more. We could chat about it another time. But yeah, that was a humbling moment for me.
Yeah, I can end on kind of the culmination of what you guys said as well. I think to fail is to learn. So if you think you're going to go into the job force and everything's going to be perfect, let me just say, sorry, you're very wrong. And honestly, how we respond to these failures are great learning opportunities. And so for myself, just kind of to keep it broader, because I want to make sure that I'm resonating with all of y'all. I mean, a majority of you guys are going to be working with relationships. I mean, I always wanted a career where I was working with people, whether it was with clients or different partners. And so I guess a story for me happened probably a couple months ago. And when I think about my role, I kind of think of like being a point person to many different partners and carriers to serve my clients best. I'm not just, I think financial planners are sometimes just seen as investment people. Oh, they're just money managers or wealth managers. No, I'm really kind of helping build out a financial plan. And sometimes that means bringing in different people, whether it is CPAs or accountants or I don't know, charitable organizations that want to work to build out a financial plan. And so one of the things that happened was a miscommunication with one of the carriers that we were working with, where we were building out a financial plan. And just so you know, this happens very often. But something happens with one of the carriers or the partners where, I mean, there's a miscommunication. And it's really hard when you're serving your clients and telling them like what we are doing to help serve them, and then there's a change in plans and how to communicate that effectively. And as I kind of reflect back on that experience, it makes me think of when you get in a fight with your best friend or with your sibling or someone in your life. I mean, would you say that when you're very upset, would you respond emotionally or logically?
Emotionally.
Emotionally, exactly. And so my client's response was very, very emotional. They were heated. They were like, you were not saying what you said you would do. And I can obviously understand, I mean, the frustration, the disappointment in that. And so being able to approach conflict when you're working with many different parties, I mean, it starts with acknowledging and trying to put yourself in your client's shoes or in the other person's shoes and acknowledge what they're feeling, but then also going back to your intention. Because for me, I know, hey, I wasn't trying to harm my clients, but things change, you know, and how are we going to communicate that effectively to our clients? It's acknowledging how they're feeling, reminding them of the intent, and then assuring them, hey, we're still going to continue to serve you. It may look a little bit different because we're working with so many different parties, but our intention is the same, and that is to serve you best. And so I'm sure when you guys step into roles where you are handling different parties and figuring out how to communicate, remember that your clients are humans and the people that you talk to are humans, and so they're not robots. Make sure that you take into consideration their emotions and put yourself into their shoes. So that's my little spiel on that.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you guys another question, but if anybody else in the audience had a question, anybody want to?
Hi, yeah, so actually there's a question in the chat for Olivia. It says, my name is Victoria and I'm currently a junior marketing major. I work as the assistant advertising manager and marketing director for our school's publishing group, Lancer Media Group. With your experience working on a college campus as an RA and working in publishing, how do you suggest I keep our student body engaged to our publications?
Yeah, that is a great question. Thank you, Victoria. I guess the first thing that comes to mind is really asking the people. I think so often in our heads we think of really great creative ideas because we are creatives, right? And we want to make sure that we're resonating with the people that we're reaching out to. But the only way to know if something's going to resonate is figuring out, hey, why don't we just ask the people and figure out what that looks like? I think in terms of like being more specific, can you give me more context in terms of, I guess like what you are kind of already releasing out to the student body?
Right, so currently we have 4 publications on campus. We have a magazine, a bi-weekly newspaper, a yearbook, as well as a broadcast channel called CBU TV. So currently my position is to kind of run advertising and the marketing campaigns for all 4 publications. Currently we have a multimedia campaign running across all 4 called Love LMG, which we ask students what they love about our publications and how we show love to them. And we're seeing some engagement with it, and the students are really excited to like get involved in the creative stuff, but then they're not really aware of what LMG is on campus. They're really excited to get involved in the creative aspect and to participate in all the events that we're throwing, and we're using that as an opportunity to inform them that, hey, these are your publications on campus and we're here for you, but they're still not like jumping to grab a newspaper, if that makes sense, which I know is an old form of media and people don't exactly read a lot of newspapers, especially this demographic, but I'm trying to get them more engaged into why our newspaper is important for them to pick up every week.
Yeah, man, that's so great. And just so you know, I'm very old school. I still scrapbook, and my parents remind me that it's the 21st century. I'm trying to think of like a connection between using social media and connecting it back to the publication. Because if you think about, I mean, people are on their phones all the time, and I think Dawn brought it up, which is interactive content. People love interactive short content, especially during the pandemic. I did some research when I was doing a marketing campaign my senior year, and people's attention spans are so short now because they just want to be doing something. And ever since the pandemic hit, that social piece of getting to see people in person was lost. And so TikTok blew up. I mean, Instagram came out with very short interactive content. I wonder if there's like a way to be able to create interactive content on your social media platforms to direct them back to the newspaper and the publication. I think tagging people too is always helpful as well. Bringing in, I call them like COIs, like center of influencers or micro influencers that can repost these things, because that's going to get little different groups kind of involved, I guess. But Dawn or Alexis, I don't know if you guys have anything else to add to that.
Yeah, I like that idea. I think one of the dangers with every new media is that people forget the old media, and that stuff still works, you know. Yeah. So I remember when a lot of the, social media was blowing up, well, people were forgetting, well, people still listen to the radio, or, Spotify, whatever, but people don't operate in silos of I just consume social, like maybe you do a lot more now. But I like the idea of cross-pollinating across platforms. And so what I would do is say, my recommendation is, you've got a newspaper, what is something the newspaper can do that social can't? Well, it's permanent, you can touch it, you can physically share it with people, and you can, I think of, Chick-fil-A had a campaign where they let people would take photographs of their stupid cow in different places, and then they would post those on a bulletin board in a physical store. So if you think about it, you've got place-based, kind of thing. You've got a community element of, I belong to this tribe. I take pictures of the cow, but then I'm also getting promoted because my picture's up in our local Chick-fil-A. So but you're letting the medium, you do things with the medium that the other mediums can't. So I mean, I don't know if you could get creative with that, but what are the things a newspaper can do that something that's more ephemeral cannot? People do crossword puzzles. I mean, there are the aspects of the newspaper that are kind of, maybe they're not necessarily archaic, but they're really kind of nostalgic. And so I would play on that.
Yeah, I agree. To piggyback off of what they both said, I do think the social media aspect, bringing that in and highlighting what is so great about the newspaper. You know what I mean? Because I think it's like you said, people are interested in doing the creative, but it's like, if I don't really find the value of picking up the newspaper, probably not gonna go pick it up, But if I can see it as I'm scrolling or whatever, and I'm like, oh, whoa, they're highlighting that today in the newspaper, or maybe something that's really, that could be really beneficial is offering some sort of incentive for getting the newspaper, or a freebie that's included in the newspaper. Those are gonna get people that are gonna walk around and they're gonna wanna pick it up. Maybe there's a scavenger hunt and they can go around, but the scavenger hunt is in the newspaper, but they get a free, whatever, Chick-fil-A coupon for doing it. You know what I mean? Like there's things like that that kind of lead them there, and then once they have it, then they realize, oh whoa, there's so much here, and then they're more likely to go back time and time again. But typically those freebies or those incentives get people in the door, so to speak, and that could be, a great way. Even those, you mentioned crossword puzzles, which are amazing, but also like even like offering, how doing the why am I drawing a blank? It's like the coloring, like everyone's doing like the coloring that's like super, I don't know, like there's these coloring books for adults. Like even saying like, hey, this week we're doing this type of coloring, I don't know, and you're highlighting somebody, somebody in a different major, like graphic design or something, and maybe they're putting something in the newspaper, they're tagging their friends on social, and now they want to go get that newspaper because there's a coloring page. Like there's ways to make it modern as well, and that entice others to come and want to pick up a newspaper. Because I know if I was here, I'm not trying to pick up a newspaper, but like, if you guys gave some incentive, if there's something, a reason for me to go, and there's value, and I know the value. I think so many times we just don't know the value, So I think that's using social media, like Liv said, I think is huge.
Yeah, and then maybe even like incentivizing, like, I don't know, putting something in your newspaper where it's like, winner will be announced on your radio. And so kind of cross-pollinating that way as well.
I know when I went to CBU, this is a humble brag, I was in the newspaper because, and I did get that newspaper, I still think I have it. I'm not joking. We started a club here, it was called Awake. It was called, or something, and it was like a prayer night, anyways, but we started a club here, and I was in the newspaper worshiping, and I took that, and I definitely still have it. I took like a couple copies, so yeah, like there is that. Like I gave it to like my dad. I was like, look, I'm like a Christian. So, but yeah, so like it's so right. Like when you recognize people, like it's you definitely want to keep it as a keepsake, and so I think that's a great point. It's valid.
How important is it to balance diversification of yourself, but also like finding your niche? I know like right now I'm having difficulties being like, do I zone in on one thing or should I be like a jack of all trades? Like how do you find that balance?
I know for me, well, I went here to CBU. Everyone gave like such a beautiful intro, and I thought I was just like saying my name, so like you don't even know anything about me besides like I'm a creative. So I went to CBU. I thought I was going to. This is going to answer your question in a long way. So I went to CBU and I studied behavioral science. I thought I was going to go into counseling, and so I was like, this is it for me. I'm going to do counseling. Prior to that, I got accepted to FITM. Thought I was going to be a fashion designer, all the things. I'm saying this to say now I'm not even in that industry at all, because you have to try on many hats to see what one fits the best, right? And so for me, I graduated. I got married my senior year. Also got pregnant my senior year. Walked 7 months pregnant here at CBU. Opened a coffee shop here in Riverside called Lift Coffee Roasters, which is now Crave at the Plaza. Horrible coffee. Seriously. And so yeah, we opened Lyft, and then from Lyft, then I opened Shift. That was not on purpose. And so from all these different things, you're trying to figure out what you're good at, right? And even now in my current role, I'm still doing that. So I like, and everyone might have their own opinion. They're gonna have what has worked for them, but for me, it's like I need to put myself out there. I need to see what works. Even now, I started talking about the digital offerings. Was that working? Was that lucrative? Was that beneficial for our company? I don't know unless I try it. Or is speaking something that's going to be beneficial for my company? I don't know unless I try it. And so my piece of advice is you just have to try and see what's going to work, and then you can hone in and be more niche. And so many times you could do all the things, but maybe not all at once. So you really focus on one thing, and then that could be your bread and butter for a while, and then you go into something else. Or you try a couple of different things, and it's kind of like you're shaking out the dirt from the gold, if you will, and then the gold stays, right, in the water pan. So, I don't know if is that helpful?
It. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I do like the analogy of like trying on many hats in business, because you really don't know, and still I wear so many hats. in my company, and some I'm really good at, and some I'm not. I need to build a team and you know, and have them handle those areas. But you don't know unless you really try.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. Oh, if I could just add to that, I would say I like the idea of your juxtaposing being a generalist as a specialist. Like, for instance, marketing, you could deep dive into SEO. I mean, you could become the expert, and you will be, I won't say you'd be pegged as that, but that's a very specific, you have to stay on top of that. And so just look at your personality. Are you like always curious? Are you always learning? Then maybe being in a tech field that's always changing will hold your interest, because you don't want to get bored, you know, so that might make sense for you. If you've not taken strengths finders and know what your key strengths are, do that, because that's very, very helpful. If you find out, you know, wow, I'm really strategic, or ideation is one of my deals. Look at jobs or talk to people, you know, and that, I think that is one of the really smartest things you can do, is talk to people who do things that look interesting. You know, it's like, I didn't know that there were jobs out there for media sales. I didn't know there were people that represented, you know, TV stations or magazines that went around to the advertisers and took them out to lunch, you know, and like did a lot of the, you know, basically got paid to schmooze. It's like, what? You make money doing that? And you have an expense account, you know, so it depends. But my husband, who's a hardcore introvert, would die. He'd be like, I can't think of a worse job in my life, you know. So know yourself, know how God's created you, and know what gives you energy. You know, you get done with a thing, do you feel like you just need to go like nap for 2 days, or are you like, yeah, when's the next one, you know? Like, so know yourself and know what gives you energy. I know that's more of a personality thing, but certain jobs are going to go into those things. Like, people that are in ad sales are going to be more of the social people that will be like the last ones to leave than the first ones there.
Yeah, that's all really good. I think knowing who I am, just to kind of transition, I'm a type 7 on the Enneagram. So if any of y'all know what that is, I mean, I'm being 50. Oh yeah, yes, John. I am a big yes man. I will say yes to everything. And so like everything that these two women said, yes to that. I guess I'll play kind of devil's advocate, because I know the other side of saying yes to too many things and the detriment in that. And so as you guys look into careers, I think it is really important to know what you want in a job and not to compromise that to like have a really good interview. When I stepped into recruiting, as I'm trying to find folks for the California office, I mean, I would ask questions like, really to just see if it's a good fit for the person I'm talking to. Obviously want to bring in the right fit for my company, but then on the other hand, it's like, I don't want someone saying yes to a job that they hate, you know? And so I love this question I ask, because I always get the both response. I'm like, when you think about the financial industry, very large spectrum. There's more of the analytical role where you're kind of sitting behind the computer, really crunching the numbers. You enjoy like math and being able to build portfolios and stuff. And then there's the other side where you are very extroverted. You love talking to people. You want to help them, and that communication piece is what you live for. And I'll be like, oh, where are you kind of in the spectrum? More for me to understand where they're coming from. And when someone says, oh, I'm both, I'm like, that's not helpful at all. And so I think like kind of being a jack of all trades, yes, put yourself out there, explore what you want. And if you don't know fully what you want, I mean, give yourself grace as well. And I think it really goes to John's point of talking to people about it, having mentors in your life to really speak truth, because sometimes when you're going through a season of life where it's just like there's so many things happening, it's hard to like, okay, take a step back and be like, okay, what do I want? Or what am I good at? And how can a potential job opportunity be in alignment with that? And so definitely say yes to a lot of things, but know that if you say yes to too many things, you're never going to be a master of something. It's like the jack of all trades, but master of none kind of thing. You don't want to be that kind of person. You want to be someone that knows what you want, and obviously stay open-minded, but kind of set boundaries on who you are. So yeah, I'd say that.
Thank you.
So I was just curious, for those who are graduating, what are some tips you guys can give us in ways to advertise ourselves online? Like, I'm probably guessing that everybody in this room has Instagram, you know, TikTok, LinkedIn. What are some tips you can give to those, you know, like to mold ourselves to be like known out there, to make us pop out?
I say, like, well, first, you have to know who you're reaching, who your ideal client is. So it's like, if you're just throwing out content to throw out content, you're not gonna get anywhere, you know? And so number one, who's your ideal client, and how do you know who your ideal client is, right? So like, you can write out, I'm sure, I mean, I hope that you guys have learned something about this, where it's like your ideal client, like, profile, if you will, like, who is that person? What is that person's name? How old are they? What is their routine? What do they eat? Literally, like, what is their lifestyle? Figuring out that first, and then from there, how can you bring value to that person, and then create your content on that way through all the platforms. Like, I would utilize TikTok, I would utilize Instagram, I would utilize, I mean, like, people still utilize Facebook because there is a lot of value on Facebook, and then creating content again for that ideal client. So that comes in a lot of different ways. Right now with Reels on Instagram, I mean, those are blowing up. If you're not using Reels on Instagram, it's like you're really missing a wide spectrum of people that could be, you know, being brought to your profile, that could be engaging with you, that you can be, you know, interacting with to hopefully, you know, make a sale. But also something that I like to do is this. I like to find people in my industry find people in my industry, but also find people that I think are my ideal client, and really build a relationship online first. So I am going to be commenting on their photo or video, right? Hyping them up. Love this, great. And it's not just like heart, right? It's not just like an emoji. It's like, this was so awesome. Why? Why was it so awesome? Why did you love whatever they're doing? Why was it interesting? Why, you know? So you're in their comments, then maybe you're in their messages, maybe you're interacting in some way to warm them up and to build that relationship online first. So then, if you ever get to the point where you're emailing them, it's not a cold email, because they've already been interacting. You've already known them. You know, you're continuously popping up to those ideal clients, or to the people that are kind of in your field. If you want to grow like a team, or if you want to collaborate with others, they already know you, because you're there, you know, you're familiar to them. And so when you shoot the email, what does that look like? It's not just a cold email like, hi, I'm Sarah from, you know, like from nowhere, and, you know, hi, will you hire me? Or hi, let's get coffee, or can I pick your brain? Well, no, you can't pick my brain, because I don't know, you're some random from, you know, online. But if you had been, you know, investing in that relationship, then I would be more likely, other people are more likely to give you their ear and to sit down with you, or to, you know, potentially give you that job opportunity or interview that you're after. So I like to do that first. Find out who your ideal client is, find them on Instagram, find their LinkedIn, find their email, you know, and start building that relationship there, so it's not cold turkey for anything else. And then you're still bringing people to your profile, because when you're commenting on other people's stuff, or when you're active in that way, other people are seeing your profile. It's kind of like you're bringing people from their profile, not yours, because they see you commenting on theirs. Does that make sense?
No, yeah.
So, so it's like, not only are you building that relationship, but you're also people are in the comments. People are like looking and seeing, and they're like, oh, who's this girl? Who's Izzy, right? Who's Izzy? You know, that's a cool name. Click it, boom. Now they're to your side, and they you know, they see your bio. It's very clear. It's very concise, and they know what you're about. Maybe they follow you. Maybe that's a potential client. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it's kind of both.
That's great. Thank you.
I would add to that, really, really good points. I like that. Do your research is basically what she's saying.
Yeah.
And that is really just 101. Do your research. Show them that you value their time enough not to waste it. So do your research. I would say number 2, lead with value. So if there's someone, I love that idea of targeting someone. If there's an industry that you really want to be, like, say you want to get into sports marketing, like I really want to represent, you know, a team or something, I want to get into that. Lead with value. And when I say that, is it retweeting that's going to be of value to that person? Is it promoting or amplifying their message that's going to bring value? Is it bringing insight into your demographic? Because you're a college student, you know, like, if there are people that might not, you know, do you have an ethnic background that it's like, you know what, I notice, I'm a, Korean American and I don't see a lot of diverse faces, but I could help you, create stuff, and bring value that way, bring a perspective that they don't have. And that would be something. I think the other thing too is that if I can encourage you, you guys have an edge. Think about it. You've got people from like the other schools and colleges at CBU that don't have marketing backgrounds. You guys have an edge. That's what you're trained to do. So use your marketing background. So show what you can do. So like I had a friend who was got a job at Google, but got a contract by showing that he understood how to use Snapchat. Like he knew it backwards and forwards, knew how to connect with audiences that way. So he created a geofence. So when he was in Google's headquarters and he was doing a Snap story, of course, of it, documenting that he's walking through these cool things. I mean, it basically, a filter came up that said, hire him. So anyone else that was shooting Snap stories in that geofenced area showed up on that thing. And I was like, wait, who thought of this? What genius? It's like, well, you don't have to be a genius, but but basically demonstrate how to do it. Another example, my background was in training people how to use Twitter. I mean, I know Twitter isn't so much your demographic, but journalists are quoting, you want to see the heads of nations are being quoted by what they say on Twitter. So don't write it off completely, because brands look at it. They've got listening tools that help listen to what's going on there. But when I was reaching out and trying to connect with people within a segment that I wanted to reach out to, they brought value, or I saw them at a conference or whatever, I would shoot a little video. I would just use my thing and I would do a video thank you. Instead of just tagging them or saying something like that, I just shot them a little video. And then it was like, oh, and then they got to see, but it wasn't in a self-serving way. It was a genuine, it has to be genuine. Otherwise you look like a slime bag. but do it in a genuine way, but then do it in some way that brings them value and say, hey, I heard this person at a conference and they rocked. So if you're ever looking for someone, whatever, something like that. Just use your own, but be genuine to who you are. If that's not your personality, don't go there.
Yeah. So those are good points.
Yeah. You guys took all of the things and land the plane with, I have a website, and man, that helped me so much when I was looking for jobs before 49 Financial reached out to me. I was looking for something in the advertising world, and people have substance. And so my website, it was kind of the hub of a lot of different things. It was a hub to get connected to my books. It was a hub for my photography business I ran. It was a hub for many different pieces. I speak to jack of all trades. I was a master of them. But I have a blog site, and I had a couple of advertising people say, hey Liv, got to see your website, your blog really stood out to me. And when I think about content that I put on my blog, it wasn't just content to have content. It was content from learning experiences in my life and things that were really meaningful that I wanted to share with the world. And so when you do think about digital presence and marketing yourself out there, I'd say, don't just release information to release information. Don't just create content with no purpose behind it. Make sure you're doing so in a meaningful way where it's substance, because people will pick up on that for sure. And then the last point I'll say, even when I'm looking for clients, never met people before and I'm reaching out to them on LinkedIn. Sometimes I'll just add my Shindig Publishing website, and for people that are interested, they'll look at it and they'll be like, hey Liv, your website's really impressive, would love to get connected to you. And so it's just kind of like a conversation starter as well.
Can I add one more thing, just because I have a heart for introverts. Let me just say that right up front, because I'm married to one, and then I also have, my daughter is a hardcore introvert too, which is poor thing, me as a mom. Don't beat yourself up if you don't want to be in front of the camera. Do not put that on yourself. And sometimes different personality types don't want to be the one that's out front. So there are strategies that you can have for that. That doesn't mean that you're just going to recede into nothingness. Get other people to talk about you. Ask your friends, and I know that's hard, but say, have I done anything in your business, in your class, or as whatever, in a volunteer thing that brought you value, would you mind saying something about it? Even something like that, adding a recommendation on your LinkedIn and getting endorsed or something like that is very helpful. So then it doesn't have to be, like, you don't have to be in front of the camera, I guess, to say something like that. Just had to throw that in there. Love you, introverts. Love you.
Yeah. Can't relate.
Awesome. Since it is Women's Month, we're wanting to know, how has your experience been as a woman in the industry, and how has that kind of been a distinguishing factor for you?
I'll start. Because I started my career in very male-dominated industries. So I was in the import automotive world, and the automotive world, just period, it was just male-dominated. It just is. And then I also slid into kind of the tech world, again, pretty male-dominated. So I was always the freak, that kind of showed up. But I think as I kind of stepped into what those strengths were, I was almost I want to say I was apologizing for my femaleness. I did find that as I grew in my career, I started apologizing less. Doesn't mean you have to be obnoxious, but it's okay to make declaratives and to be clear and to not phrase everything as a question. So if I would 100% challenge you, if you're a woman going into any area of industry, look at your language. Look at how you speak, how you present your ideas, and do so in a way that gives dignity to who God made you. There are aspects of being, and I'm not a typical woman. I don't like rom-coms. I would much rather watch a historical. I'm not like a typical. What you do, I'm in awe. I just think with all the flowers and it's but I couldn't do that. But I am in awe and appreciate that beauty when I see it. But I think that there's something really important to embrace. There may be a emphasis on hospitality or creating environments. Well, that translates beautifully into marketing, because especially when you're trying to create connection with consumers, what is that? That's hospitality, right? That's inviting people and to create relationship and stuff. So that, I guess that's more of I would say something a typically woman characteristic or whatever.
Yeah, I think for me, in being a female and in this industry, but I kind of cross over into many different industries, because I would say I'm in the arts and events industry, so it is primarily female based, right? However, there is a lot of overlap, and I've done creative consulting for churches. I've done different campaigns and with other male organizations, owned organizations. So I obviously do work a lot with men, and I think that sometimes, because I am independent and strong and straightforward and direct, I do see that as a woman I can kind of maybe want to pull back and be like, oh, that's too much, or I don't want to speak to that, or that's probably coming off too direct. And so I can kind of get in my head about that, and that's my own thing, right? However, I have had situations where I'm maybe on the phone with someone, and it's kind of like, you're just a cute little girl. and that's how it is. It's like, well, we have done this, or our team has done this, and if I'm trying to offer insight, maybe you're not seen as credible. And I've had my business for 8 years now, and it's still kind of like, and how is that hobby doing? You know what I mean? And so there's a lot of that that does happen, and even in the Christian world. Like I said, I've worked with some mega churches, and they're all primarily men on the board, and then here I walk in like, hello. It's like, and it is intimidating, and it is you just kind of have to know your voice and stand up for what you do believe in, and be confident in what you have to offer. So there are challenges, I would say. However, I love being a woman and owning my own company and doing the thing, and also hopefully empowering and encouraging other women and doing the same, right? And I also think that we need more strong women in the workforce, but also I'm a mom, I'm a mother of 2, and just being able to show my kids as well that you can work, you can still be, you can still work and be a Christian and be a good mom, you know what I mean? Like, you can still do all the things. It might look different, and there's different sacrifices that you have, but yeah, so that's my answer.
I mean, I guess I'll speak to being in the financial industry, and I'm definitely a minority. I mean, when you think about kind of the average financial advisor, it's going to be a white male in his 50s to 60s. And so I am a young Korean female financial advisor. And so just kind of speaking to that, I think remembering your worth, not just in Christ, but just being a woman as well, because you have something to offer. And I've even had certain female clients that are like, I want you to be my financial advisor because you are a woman. And I think we have something to bring in that when you're sorting out finances, I mean, it's very much privatized because it's just very much been hush-hush, kind of let me do it all by myself, because there is just so much brokenness in our industry. There's so much greed, there's so much ego. And so really just kind of thinking about like when I said yes to this offer and how I could make a change in really just being a female and taking lead of an industry that very much doesn't have any women. I thought, man, how am I going to do that? And the first thing that came to mind was I can't do it by myself. And so we have about 8 woman advisors, maybe a little bit more. In a company that's about 250 people. So I'm like less than 3% of just kind of the overall population. And what I've really found helpful is having a company that does believe in women. I mean, our CEO literally said, if we get to a point where we do all of our goals and we don't bring in women into our industry, we would have revolutionized nothing. I mean, he has 3 girls, and he wants them to see strong women in the financial industry because he knows that we can make an impact. And so just having a company that believes in you is important, and even has meetings where it's like, I'll have meetings once a month with leaders at 49 that are all men, and they're like, hey, how can we make this environment more inclusive to women? And I love that we're able to have these conversations. But I'm also just very thankful that a company opens up the opportunity to do that. On the other hand, I have monthly meetings with my other 7 advisors and really just talking about the hard things about being a woman in this industry. By no means are we victimizing ourselves, but there are different hardships that come with meeting up with clients that are males and how they may perceive us. And so being able to have a band of women together to encourage each other and figure out how we can actually get creative about our jobs being women, because there is definitely a market out there that we can really make an impact in. The last piece I'll say, and I really speak to anyone and everyone on this, having a mentor in your life as you go into the job force that is in the same industry as you. And I mean, for women, that is a woman. Because it is really, really important to have someone speaking truth into you when life gets hard, and whether it has to do with being a woman in the industry or just having someone in your life to pour truth and remind you of your identity and how it's not found in this career, but it is found in the big man upstairs, is so important. So that would be my answer to that question.
Can I add just one other comment? You just made me think of it. Sometimes when you have insecurity, you are afraid to admit you don't know stuff. And so I think that as women, especially if you're feeling maybe insecure in the power dynamics that are going on in your office, one of the things that you can do is admit when you don't know something, and it just diffuses that. And so all of a sudden it's like, I looked at it this way, that there was a trend with young professionals, with people that maybe had been in the industry for a lot of years, like maybe pastors, and you've got all these young tech guys. It's like, well, you're not cool and hip because you're not using different social media things. And they didn't have respect for the people that were older. And the way I looked at it is that that's the absolute 180-degree wrong way to get people on your side, is to act like you're the arrogant know-it-all. I mean, you don't want to listen to someone like that. So I think that the aspect or the approach is to really to say, you know, I as a person, I'm not stupid, but I don't know anything about brain surgery. I just haven't had the training. And so if you treat other people like that and say, you know what, they just haven't been exposed. They didn't grow up with a digital thing and clothes with pockets that, you know, like hold your phone, because they're not from that. But that doesn't mean they're stupid. And so I think approaching people with, you know, even as a woman, approaching people with a positive respect. That, you know what, I know stuff you don't know, but you know what, you know a lot of stuff I don't know, and we can, you know, maybe work together and do something really better than what I could have done alone.
So another question I had is, how do you guys deal with conflict within your organizations? Like, and especially you, since you run it, like, how do you guys deal with maybe people under you not getting along or not getting along with your colleagues, and like handle it in a respectful way to still maintain the relationship?
Yeah, I mean, she spoke to the Enneagram earlier, saying that she was a 7, and I you know, it's some people don't like the Enneagram, whatever, but for me, I have everyone take an Enneagram test or some sort of personality test, so I get to know each individual. Because I'm in a small company, so now obviously if I was like 200 people, like there'd be different managers that would get to know them. But since I'm not, I get to have a personal relationship with each person, and so I always, even in the interview process, I ask if they've taken the Enneagram. If they haven't, I have them take it, just so that I know how to communicate to them. Because I might not communicate with someone who, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Enneagram, but if someone's an 8 on the Enneagram, which is the challenger, which is super bold and direct, which I have a lot of, I'm gonna be a little bit more direct in my approach, right? But if someone is maybe a 4 on the Enneagram, maybe they're a little bit, they're kind of high emotion, low emotion, I might be a little bit softer, in, you know, in the way that I don't think it's one size fits all. I think you kind of have to have that relationship with the person. And obviously there's times where you don't have a relationship, like with a client. I might not have I might not know their Enneagram, right? I don't know them on that level to be able to speak into them, but I always just ask clarifying questions. That would be my main thing, is I lead with clarifying questions first to make sure that I actually do have the full picture. Because so many times we can assume, and we can assume wrong. Maybe they were just having a bad day. Maybe they misunderstood. Maybe, you know, maybe something's going on in their personal life. So I always like to ask first all the questions, get more information, and then from there I'll kind of like dissect it. And it's kind of that hug punch hug. I don't know if you've heard that. It's like hug, like okay, let's get all the questions, let's talk about this, let me gather the information, and then it's like, okay, now that I've gotten this, here's the feedback. I would like to give you feedback, or I would like to, you know, point out, you know, something like that, or have you considered, you know, this and this, so that way they come to their own conclusion about it. I don't have to be like, you did not do this, you did not do that, you did not do that. I can ask questions that bring them to the realization of, okay, yeah, I may have dropped the ball on that. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So that way it's not just like a hammering over the head. It's still, you're still being direct, like you're still calling it out, but in a loving and kind way, right? And then again with the hug, like, this is what you're doing really well, I appreciate you, like, you know. And so that's kind of like that's like a very brief, but you know, synopsis, if you will, of how I go about it. But in my team in particular, I definitely, because I know them, I can know how to maybe communicate with them more. I know some people might need more affirmation than others. Some people need me to be more direct than others. So yeah.
Do you want to go, Liv? I'll go last.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of just hit it in the nail. I think, like, this is actually something I had a conversation with my leader about last week in terms of how to communicate hard things. I don't know about people in the room, but confrontation has always been something I've struggled with, because I also struggle with people pleasing and really wanting to please others. And we actually kind of talked about like the life of Jesus and how he confronted situations, and accountability or compassion, you know, like it's just like very much on opposite sides of the spectrum, and it really comes to asking good questions. So don't want to repeat everything that Lev said, because she said it's spot on, but it's like asking good questions allows you to get to the root of the problem, but even more, it allows the person to answer, and in the process get to communicate, oh man, okay, maybe this is where I went wrong, or get to the root of the issue themselves, which is so much more convicting than you just telling them, hey, you did this wrong, right? Because then they're gonna feel misunderstood, and then you're in a whole nother dilemma of trying to like backtrack. And so asking good questions to make sure that you have just kind of all the information before then maybe lovingly giving positive feedback. I love the punch hug bug, or punch hug, no, hug punch
Yeah.
bug.
Punch out, yeah.
Anyway, don't punch first, punch first, but
And
that's what I would say. to that
also
one.
too, just to really quickly before you close that, I think too, you have to know yourself, because again with the Enneagram, I'm a 3 on the Enneagram. I have high 7, high 8, but which is very success driven, goal oriented, and sometimes you're just like, well, let's just get it done. You know what I mean? Like, we're gonna get done because here's the goal. We need to meet the goal, do the things to hit the goal. And with my high 8, I can be like, well, why isn't this done? Like, why aren't we doing it? So I have to know myself too, to realize, how am I articulating, how am I coming across to the team, because I know myself and I know that's how I talk. So I have to be in tune with the way that I'm verbalizing to my team to not offend and to, be a verb approach in that way. And then also, like, even as a leader, you're a leader in any position you're in. Just because I'm the boss doesn't mean that an intern doesn't have a voice or is a leader with other interns, or it doesn't mean that my graphic designer isn't a leader in her position, right? We lead by example, and I think too, like, it's where you're kind of like setting the pace and the culture of the work environment by the way that you guys interact, if that's conflict or that's just your day-to-day. And so I think it's just really important to like know how you do deal with conflict, how you talk with people, and then kind of refining that as well, being self-aware.
Yeah, I love those comments. I think the only 2 things I would add on top of those very, very astute comments is, number 1, don't talk to other people about the conflicts you're having with that person. It is always easier to go, well, do you believe what? It's almost like you're trying to rally, like this invisible crowd behind you to see your point. That looks bad. It's not good for you, and it's not good for them. It's not good for the culture of where you're at. So be known as the person that people can't go gossip to. Because when you gossip, other people are going to come to you, are going to wonder inside, I wonder what she says about me when I'm not around. So when you have conflict, be the person that is not the source of trying to recruit other people to your position. Just the voice of experience. It's much easier to get squared away with that person. I'm not saying it's easy, because I hate conflict just as much as the next person does. I think the other secret weapon that we have is, if we're a follower of Christ, we have the Holy Spirit inside us, and He will guide us into truth. It is okay to come in your time in the morning before you do your day, just go, Jesus, I can't stand this person. Give me love for them. Help me to see. And what my prayer is, give me your eyes for that person. Yeah. Pray that, and it's amazing, because you can't hate someone if you've brought them before God's throne. I mean, you just can't, because now all of a sudden you're going to see them in a different light. You'll see those questions of, oh my gosh, I didn't realize your mom's in the hospital, and I bet you have no idea what's going on inside people's lives. So assume the best, but ask God, invite Him into your work life and how you get along at work. And God, I've got this scary presentation with my boss, and you know how mean he is. I'm just kidding. Sorry, that's funny. But ask for wisdom. Ask and just say, Lord, make me be the best version of me I can be. And if I tend to be more quiet, they just help me to be comfortable with that. So conflict is gonna happen. Yeah. Let me just tell you, even in Christian institutions. More so. Yeah, because in Christian institutions, people don't want to talk about it. Yeah, or there's like this expectation that we're Christians, we should all love each other. Yeah. Be holy, emotionally sound. It's like, no.
So how have you balance, I know a lot of us are like juniors and seniors, like it's like a 2-part question, like how they say like, oh, everyone starts somewhere, but also knowing your worth, and like how do you do, and like the second part would be like confidence, like how do you distinguish that?
I think it kind of goes back to your first question of like even finding what you're good at. It's like confidence. You don't. I mean, like obviously everyone has their own personality, right? So some people might have false confidence and you think they're confident. But I think it's honestly by trying things and by failing. Like one of you guys said, like, you know, failure is the fastest way to learning. Failure is the fastest way to growth. Putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. The more you do something, the more confident you're going to be. And so the knowing your worth part, it kind of comes. I don't know if it's like one or the other. I feel like it's kind of both are parallel. As you grow in your confidence, you're growing in your worth as well. I mean, like, I'm not talking from a Christian standpoint. I'm talking about, you know, in whatever career path you're going into. And so I definitely feel like as you are trying things and you're failing, your confidence grows, and then your worth, you know, your worth is right there with it. When it comes to, I don't know if you tell me if you're talking more about like position or pay, or like are you talking or
like position, just because like with internships and stuff right now, like I have like kind of a bad experience, and like that's what I was told, that like everyone starts somewhere, so like if you want this opportunity you can start here. But for me, I'm like, oh, it's not necessarily the position I want, but it made me doubt and think maybe it is where I start, but like how do I balance that? Like it kind of sprouted some self-doubt. So like
that's interesting. I mean, yeah, I have an internship program at Shift, and it's not going to be for everyone. So it's you. I think it's kind of up to you to decide. Is this my next best step? I always say that. Like, what's your next best step? You don't have to look 5 steps down the road. What's your next best step? Is it that position or is it not? And I don't know if that has anything to do with like necessarily your worth, or more it has to do with if that might just not be the best fit for you. So ultimately, you know what's going to be the next best step for yourself. But I do like to keep that in my mind, like what is the next best step? And with that internship, maybe that wasn't the next best. Maybe that wasn't it. Or maybe what I like to always say too is, what is God showing me in this experience? Even if that isn't where you're landing, there's something there. And there's always a golden nugget, I say. Like there's always a piece of gold that you can find in any situation that it's not in vain. That labor, you know, the work, the time, the hours, that's not in vain if your eyes are open to what God's doing in that opportunity. So even if that's not the position you want, God's still doing something. God's still refining your character, and He is giving you wisdom and experience in this, you know, in that opportunity that now you can take to another, you know, to a better opportunity or the next opportunity. So I think that we learn so much through experience, and even if it's not the best experience, if you have the right perspective and mindset, you know, if you shift your perspective there, like I think that you're gonna gain a lot.
okay,
That makes sense.
Can you repeat the question? Was the question on like how to navigate work with like pursuing a job?
yeah, in essence.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, kind of being in the working world now, I've definitely, again, have a lot of my failures, and I can definitely speak to this. Well, first of all, you guys all know this, where your identity is founded, and it's found in Christ, right? And so when you enter into the working world, it's going to be quite the shift. I mean, especially if it's a grind in the very beginning, and you're pretty much your entire life seems like it's work. And I think in that season, it's important to set work boundaries, but also understand what season you are in right now. I mean, when I was building my business from the get-go as an entrepreneur, I mean, I was working very, very long hours, and it could be easy to lose sight of my identity in Christ because all I felt like I was doing was work. I felt like my identity was what I did and what I was able to produce. And that is super, super toxic. And so in terms of what I encourage all of you guys to do is, if you guys don't have biblical community, when you do go into the working world, find biblical community, make that a priority. And if you have a company that really values that, I mean, have them hold you accountable to that. I mean, I work for a biblically based financial planning firm, and so it's cool to have a leader not only checking in on me on the work side, but hey, are you getting plugged into community? Who is mentoring you? What did you take away from your time with your mentor? because I think it's really important, because when I think about all the different things in your life, you have different accounts. And one of your accounts might be your job. Another account might be your relationships, your family life. Another account might be your boyfriend or your girlfriend, you know? And making sure you're managing all those different accounts, your faith life, your work, your fitness, and your health. I mean, all of them work in tandem to being your best version. And so making sure that you are investing time in reminding yourself of your identity, which is spending time with the Lord, is going to be really, really integral as you guys think about going into the working world.
So does anyone have any?
Yeah, I have another question. So I actually learned about you, Alexis, through Peyton. Me and her have had some classes together. And so I've noticed that she started posting about your business and being an intern there. And since her internship, I started following you. And I think this question is directed more towards you, but if Dawn and Liv have something to share, they can add on. And it's more of a creative question, but what's the most interesting trend you see for 2022 or 2023?
That's a good question.
Sorry.
Trend. I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily a new trend, but I definitely think that we already talked about short videos, but also coupling that with being relatable and authentic. I mean, that's not new, but I do think that that is going to continue on, and we might see some different variations of that. I think people are very into, no longer the perfect, aesthetic. I still like try to hold on to that, but the perfect aesthetic, Instagram, it's very more the raw, the real, sharing relatable stories, showing the actual real life behind, but I had a podcast, I still have a podcast, but I haven't been posting on it, but called It's Not What It Seems. And that whole thing was, it's not what it seems, because business isn't what it seems, marketing isn't what it seems, your personal life isn't what it seems on these perfectly curated blocks. And so I think that that's going to continue to be something that we see. It might look in a different, it might present itself in different ways, and people, different creatives and different business owners might use reels or use different, formats to present that. But I definitely think we're continuing on with less of a filtered life, less of a filtered work life, less of a filtered, all the things. And so I definitely look forward to sharing more of that type of content too on my Instagram. Not even just Shift, but personally, to be relatable and to connect with people. And my background with behavioral science, through counseling, it's that connection. I always say I want to be able to at least impact one person from my story or my testimony, and I think that is kind of what we see going forward is more raw content. So
Thank you.
not a really original answer, but that's what I have.
Okay, well it is 7, so I don't want to keep you guys, so we do need to wrap it up, but I don't know if you guys are open to questions after maybe, but yeah, so.
Let's give them a round of applause.
Nice meeting you.
Amazing.
Yes,
meeting
thank
you,
you guys
Liv.
so much for
I'm here
having
somewhere.
me. I appreciate it.
Real quick before
Yes,
Liv,
ma'am.
you sign off, could we take a group photo with our speakers and all of our animated members?
Woman after my
Sure,
own
how's
heart.
that? Is it just
I'm so big.
I'll just crouch down by you.
That is so funny. Oh my goodness.
That's awesome. No, that actually is a thing. We call it camp photos after an event, because the camp photo is, remember, it's like a souvenir of something good that happened.
Are you gonna come up here? Oh, is it just a club thing?
No, it's not. It's not.
They said
You guys can come up. No, it's just it's a meeting. It's like an event.
We could have some people crouch down.
Yeah, if we could have another crouchy level.
Oh, you gotta get in it.
No, I don't do pictures.
I know, right?
I know. We have room over here. Guys, don't be shy. You can see her.
Getting in? Alright, get in.
I'm so good. This is hilarious.
The giant
Alright,
lizard.
3, 2, 1. Cool.
Yay!
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Liv. That was really funny. Her face was so big and little.
They connected, they connected you with her. And then